Drew, batter up.
Batting last. Thanks for having me. My name is Andrew Folland. I represent the California Water Foundation, and as was mentioned earlier, I'm about 2 months into that position. Am I live?
Red button down.
Okay, thanks. There we go. Hello, check. California Water Foundation invests in actions that advance innovative approaches to policies and practices that achieve sustainable water future for communities, farms, and the environment of California. Prior to that, to joining the Water Foundation, I worked for Stanford University and did supported as well as engaged in research on groundwater. So this is an issue that I'm familiar with, but certainly don't have the long history that some of the other panelists do. The director of the California Water Foundation, Lester Snow, and I were recently discussing the idea of hosting a series of dialogues and meetings shortly after I arrived to help try to coalesce stakeholders around some of the challenges facing the state around the current regime for regulation or management of groundwater, and really at the same time the state was engaged in some conversations about that kind of stakeholder engagement, and so we offered to sponsor and support some ongoing a stakeholder dialogue that would carry us through April, that would result in a report to the governor and the legislature, making some specific recommendations on what they might be able to do in terms of addressing these challenges. So I want to touch on a little bit of that in my remarks and kind of provide a little bit of background and detail, but I'll be quick because I'm sure we want to get to some questions. To my mind, this has been a long time in the making, and I think from everybody I've spoken to, we're at a point where the dialogue has really changed dramatically. I mean, people had previous to this were not talking about groundwater and some of the threats and challenges that we've been facing. People have been having these kinds of conversations for at least 30 or 40 years, at least not in earnest. Now, certainly there have been a number of efforts over the last several years where people have attempted or tried to make some modest changes, perhaps even a few aggressive changes to how we deal with groundwater statewide. And some of those are quite laudable, but I think that people have really opened up and recognized that something's really got to give here, so I in fact actually when I was at Stanford, I received numerous calls actually from Stanislaus County from folks from the Farm Bureau calling up and saying, I understand you guys are doing research on groundwater, we need help. This is just, we're in a critical situation here. Somebody needs to step in and do something. I've visited Paso Robles a few times now, and if you read the news accounts from what's going on down there, again, a really desperate situation, a lot of intense conversation. I attended a meeting a few months back in Tulare, where speaker after speaker got up and we're talking about overdraft and the problems of overdraft and that something's got to be done. And people were using words like curbing pumping, even the confronting the idea that there may have to be fouling in some places. People are scared. But they weren't as angry as they were eager for some kind of resolution or solution to this challenge. I think I've also done a fair amount of work in Australia and looking at their recent history in dealing with water. And I think, if you talk to those folks, just 2-3 years into their decade-long drought, they weren't. They didn't realize that where they were in that process. They didn't know that they were actually that the wave was crashing over them, and so I think it's really important that we not lose the momentum here, and that we do take action as a state. It's already been mentioned that there are a number of ongoing efforts. The Governor's Water Action Plan, discussions in the legislature, the Water Resources Control Board efforts. Aqua has a really fine group of folks looking at this, and you all as well. So from the perspective of the California Water Foundation, I just want to sort of emphasize or underscore why we're involved in this and why we're interested. I think one of the advantages of philanthropy and one of the advantages of a nonprofit organization is that we can be relatively nimble, we can be responsive, and we can quickly gather information and bring together parties. And so we recognize that strength gives us a role that maybe could be a contributing factor in helping inform the government, whether that's the executive branch or the legislature, hopefully both, on what options are available to it. And so, our interest is in sustainability and long-term sustainability. Clearly, we've heard those interests from many of the other panelists here. We are approaching this first and foremost from the standpoint that local decision-making and local management are really preferable to other options, and that there is, in fact, a state interest in addressing this, that to avoid irreparable harm, and to really actually recognize the value that groundwater can play in a future of uncertainty and volatility as we anticipate with climate change. So it's been characterized that what the Water Foundation is doing is at the request of the governor. It's not, or that we're somehow an arm of the governor's office. That's not entirely true. We certainly have been coordinating closely with the Brown administration as well as folks in the legislature, and but this is really an effort that is of our own initiation, and is something where we have invited a group of stakeholders together to have some conversations, and it builds upon the conversations that are happening elsewhere, and also builds upon past conversations that help that are also geared towards helping inform government here. Our goal is not to actually develop some kind of a negotiated agreement or consensus document. I mean, certainly consensus is something that we desire and we would like to see, but we intend to draft a report that reflects the diversity of opinion or that we hear and we gather through conversation and through evaluation around what are some really good steps for potential legislation. What might that look like? But so consensus. I want to be real clear about that. We're not seeking consensus, but we do want to reflect a wide diversity of opinion, certainly reasonable opinion anyway. We expect to deliver a report to the governor and the legislature by mid to late April. Our steering committee consists, we have impaneled a steering committee that will meet tomorrow for the first time, 14 individuals coming from a fairly wide array of geographies, backgrounds, including public agencies, including ag, the environmental and environmental justice communities, counties, and others. We are also reaching out and engaging in some larger stakeholder meetings that will broaden the number of people that we're able to consult and interview. We wanted to keep the steering committee manageable down to no more than 15, and so, certainly we've gotten a lot of calls from people who have wanted to engage and participate. We want to encourage that. We want to hear from a lot of different people, anybody who's interested, but we had to keep our core group fairly small. So we will be doing these interest group sessions. We'll also be undertaking interviews, and certainly would welcome any written comments that people might want to provide. We don't anticipate being able to cover every single issue affecting groundwater in the state of California. It's just simply too much to do in such a short period of time. We are going to start with some of the foundation that's been established through some of the efforts like the Water Action Plan, but we're certainly not wedded to those concepts. And we welcome the opportunity to collaborate with anyone who is interested. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Randy.
Andrew, thank you very much.